Imagine a narrow strait, less than 20 miles wide, where 1/3 of the world's oil must pass every single day. A desert so hot it can melt truck tires at 159 degrees Fahrenheit. And a nation that runs an entire heavy industrial economy under some of the harshest sanctions on the planet. Forget the evening news. Welcome to Iran. Today, we move beyond political barriers to dissect ancient engineering lethal landscapes and the relentless mechanical endurance of a 3,000-year-old civilization where people simply refuse to collapse under pressure. Setting out from the southernmost tip of the country we enter, waters you have heard about hundreds of times in war reports, yet rarely seen up close. The Persian Gulf. More precisely, the fragile boundary between the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman. This is the Strait of Hormuz. This is not a scenic route for leisurely cruises. It is the most tense geopolitical artery of the modern world. The seabed here does not just hold coral, but the very foundation of the global economy. Look at the raw numbers. Geographically, the Strait of Hormuz appears wide. At its narrowest point, the distance from the Iranian coast to the Arabian Peninsula is about 21 miles. 21 miles may sound vast for a speedboat, but for global trade, it is a funnel. The reality is even harsher. Due to shallow waters' hidden reefs and strict maritime constraints, the actual safe navigation channel for massive supertankers is only about 2 miles wide. There are 2 such lanes, one inbound and one outbound, separated by a 2-mile buffer zone. That leaves just 6 miles of usable space to handle 1/3 of the world's seaborne oil. Now consider the mechanical and psychological pressure at this choke point. Every day, roughly 18 million barrels of oil are forced through this 2-mile corridor. They are carried by supertankers stretching over 1,000 feet in length, weighing hundreds of thousands of tons, moving with immense inertia. Sudden turns or stops are impossible. Guiding a floating machine filled with millions of gallons of flammable fuel through such a narrow passage is already a severe engineering challenge. But in Hormuz, you are not just battling the current. Every square meter of this water is under constant surveillance. Military radar systems sweep every movement. Electronic intelligence stations scattered across nearby islands monitor every signal. And most visible of all is the presence of armed fast attack boats from the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, cutting sharply across the bows of massive tankers like packs of wolves circling mammoths. They are not there for observation. They are there to control, to deter, and to enforce a cold reality. Any engine failure, any miscalculation, or any breach of sanctions can instantly transform this corridor into a military flashpoint. At the Strait of Hormuz, there is no room for the romance of the ocean. There are only steel machines, rivers of black oil worth billions of dollars, and a balance of power stretched to its limit. At any moment, a single disabled ship blocking the lane could send shockwaves through the entire global energy supply chain, and the price at your local gas station would change by the next morning. Moving deeper inland, leaving behind the crowded straits and the noise of the global economy, we encounter an enemy that cannot be negotiated with and cannot be reasoned with. It is the raw, primal heat of the earth. Welcome to the Dasht-e Lut. This is not just a barren landscape. This is the planet's own furnace. In 2005, NASA's Aqua satellite aimed its infrared sensors at this region and recorded a number that stunned meteorologists. The desert surface burned at 159.3 degrees Fahrenheit, roughly 70 degrees Celsius. To put that into perspective, at this temperature, heavy truck tires begin to soften. Industrial grease melts into liquid, and proteins in the human body begin to break down after only a few hours of direct exposure. Dasht-e Lut holds the record for the highest land surface temperature ever recorded on Earth. What defines this alien landscape is not rolling sand dunes like those in the Sahara Desert. Instead, you find the Kalut's massive ridges of rock and sand rising from the cracked surface like the ruins of an abandoned extraterrestrial city. These formations are not built by human hands or any supernatural force. They are carved by a relentless geological sand-blasting machine. Powerful winds blowing consistently in one direction from northwest to southeast carry countless grains of quartz sand that act like natural abrasives. Over thousands of years, they have stripped away the softer layers leaving behind these hardened structures. Some kaluts rise more than 300 feet high, standing like silent fortresses in the scorching heat. You might assume that nothing could survive here. That is a logical conclusion if you are thinking in terms of fragile life. But nature always finds a way to engineer perfect survival systems. Consider the desert beetle. It has no thick fur for insulation and no accessible water to drink. Its only weapons are mechanics and thermodynamics. Its outer shell reflects a portion of the solar radiation. But its true survival strategy lies in speed and precision. When surface temperatures reach critical levels, this biological excavator uses its powerful front legs to dig rapidly into the cooler layers beneath the sand. Just a few inches below the temperature can drop dramatically. The beetle turns itself into a living thermal regulator, escaping the deadly daytime heat and emerging only when night brings relief. In the Dasht-e-Lut, survival is not measured by beauty, but by mechanical adaptation in a world that is constantly trying to crush you. How can an entire city survive on the edge of a desert where temperatures can reach 150 degrees Fahrenheit without electricity or modern air conditioning? For the people living in this extreme climate, they do not rely on artificial cooling technology. They use the laws of physics directly. As you enter the desert city of Yazd, the most striking feature on the skyline is not apartment blocks or skyscrapers, but thousands of tall brick towers known as badjir or wind catchers. Do not let the ancient appearance of these structures fool you. These are precisely engineered thermodynamic machines. The towers are built with geometrically aligned openings, designed to capture even the slightest breeze. As wind enters, pressure differences force the air downward through a central shaft deep underground, where it is guided across a subterranean water reservoir. Evaporation occurs instantly, stripping heat from the air. The cooled, denser air then flows into the living spaces above, while the hot, stagnant air inside the house is pushed out through an opposite shaft. This is a massive mechanical cooling system that has operated continuously for centuries without consuming a single watt of electricity. But this cooling machine would be completely useless without a reliable water source. That leads us to one of the most brutal and remarkable engineering achievements of the ancient world, the Qanat system. This is a 3,000-year-old underground network, stretching hundreds of thousands of miles, carved entirely by hand through solid rock and compact desert soil. Its total length is so vast that it could wrap around the Earth multiple times. Constructing a qanat was not work for the faint of heart. Specialized tunnel diggers, known as mukani, descended into vertical shafts hundreds of feet deep. They worked in severe oxygen deprivation, in cramped and pitch-black conditions, using only pickaxes and leather buckets to haul debris to the surface. Tunnel collapse, underground flooding, and toxic gas exposure were constant threats. Yet the physical danger was not even the most intimidating part. The true challenge was mathematical precision. To transport water from distant mountain aquifers to cities dozens of miles away, these workers had no electronic surveying tools or laser instruments, yet they had to maintain a perfectly calculated gradient. The slope had to be accurate down to fractions of a percent. If it was too steep, the force of the water would erode and destroy the tunnel. If it was too shallow, the water would stagnate and never reach its destination. Using only plumb lines and basic geometric principles, they created a gravity-driven hydraulic system that has functioned smoothly for 3,000 years. In this land, life is not given. It is carved out through sweat, blood, and raw mechanical ingenuity. In this land, the searing heat of the desert is not the only enemy. Throughout history, this region has been a crossroads of empires and a target of some of the most brutal invasions. When Mongol forces swept across the land, or when desert raiders struck without warning, the people could not rely on fragile surface walls. They needed a more absolute form of defense, so they chose to disappear entirely from the surface. Beneath the dusty ground of the town of Nushabad, not far from Tehran, lies a remarkable military secret. A 3-level underground city carved 60 feet below the earth. These were not temporary shelters. Nushabad is a masterpiece of defensive architecture. A vast medieval bunker system. Every detail was designed to eliminate the enemy's advantage. Look at the narrow and winding tunnels. They were intentionally carved so tight that a fully armored man could not stand upright, forcing intruders to bend and move one by one. This transforms a large invading force into a slow line of vulnerable targets. The defenders, familiar with the darkness, waited at sharp corners, able to eliminate each intruder quietly and efficiently. Traps were built throughout the system. Deep concealed pits waited for a single misstep. Heavy stone doors could seal off entire sections, trapping enemies in darkness and panic. But the true brilliance of Nushabad lies in its ventilation system. Thousands of people could hide underground for weeks, even months, without suffocating. The secret was a network of air shafts cleverly disguised as ordinary wells on the surface. Enemies walked above them, completely unaware that an entire city was functioning beneath the sand. Underground water sources and food storage ensured the survival of the community. Nushabad stands as proof of the human instinct to survive. And the mastery of mechanical ingenuity when pushed to the absolute limit. When the surface was no longer safe, they built a new world in the dark, an invisible fortress hidden beneath the feet of those who hunted them. Moving deeper south, we confront the dried remains of an ancient superpower. Do not look for romance or myth here. The ruins of Persepolis, the capital of the Achaemenid Empire, are in fact a brutal testament to the logistical power and heavy mechanical engineering of the ancient world. When you see stone columns rising more than 60 feet into the desert sky, do not ask how beautiful they are. Ask how they were raised. Massive limestone blocks, some weighing up to 100 tons, were quarried miles away. But here is the astonishing part. The ancient Persians completed this enormous workload without the use of the wheel or iron tools. They used bronze saws, abrasive sand leverage systems, and the raw mechanical force of tens of thousands of workers. To drag these colossal stones across unforgiving terrain. But transporting the stone was only half the battle. This region sits in an active seismic zone. The builders knew that earthquakes could easily tear apart any rigid stone structure. So their engineers developed a reinforcement technique thousands of years ahead of its time. Instead of using conventional mortar, they precisely fitted the stone blocks together, carved internal cavities, inserted solid iron clamps, and then poured molten lead to lock the structure in place. As the lead cooled, it acted as a massive mechanical shock absorber, allowing the columns to flex and absorb seismic energy without fracturing. This anti-seismic system was so advanced that it has kept the structures standing for over 2,500 years. Yet a structure that could bend to the forces of the earth could not withstand the machinery of war. In 330 BCE, Alexander the Great shattered Persian power and marched into Persepolis. This was not a simple conquest. It was an industrial-scale looting operation. The volume of gold, silver, and treasure accumulated over generations was so vast that his army could not carry it by hand. Military records from the time indicate that they had to requisition 20,000 mules and 5,000 camels, loading them to the point of collapse, just to transport the stolen wealth out of the city. And when there was not a single piece of gold left to take, Alexander ordered the entire palace complex to be burned. The fire, fueled by cedar wood roofs from Lebanon, burned so intensely that it melted the lead clamps inside the limestone blocks. When you walk among the remains of Persepolis today under the harsh desert sun, you are not admiring art or elegance. You are witnessing one of humanity's greatest mechanical achievements and the remnants of an uncompromising act of military destruction. In the West, we are accustomed to burying the dead underground or cremating them in industrial furnaces. That is the standard process. But for the followers of the ancient Zoroastrianism in Iran, both methods were considered unforgivable sins. In their belief system, earth and fire are sacred elements. Placing a decaying body into the ground would contaminate precious groundwater and fertile soil. Burning it would defile the sacred flame. So how do you handle thousands of bodies across generations when you can neither bury nor burn them? Their answer was a ruthless, precise, and completely trace-free biological decomposition system. Look to the barren hills on the outskirts of Yazd. You will see massive circular stone structures enclosed by high walls, resembling abandoned miniature Roman arenas. These are called dakma, or the Towers of Silence. Do not mistake them for tombs or memorials. They are large-scale biological processing facilities. These towers were built on elevated ground far from settlements and water sources, with solid stone foundations designed to prevent any leakage into the earth. The operational process of the Tower of Silence is a remarkable exercise in functional optimization. When a person dies trained, attendants carry the body to the top of the tower. The body is placed naked on flat stone platforms in a strict geometric arrangement to maximize space. Men are placed in the outer ring, women in the middle, and children in the innermost circle. Then nature takes over. Flocks of vultures, the most efficient organic processors in the desert, descend rapidly. With sharp beaks and powerful digestive acids, a group of vultures can strip a body of flesh within hours. No heavy machinery is required, no fuel is consumed, and the speed of the process prevents bacteria and infectious disease from spreading. After the birds complete their task, the remaining skeletons are left exposed under the intense desert sun for months. Ultraviolet radiation naturally bleaches and sterilizes the bones until they become dry and brittle. At that point, workers collect the remains and place them into a deep central pit located at the core of the tower. The bottom of this pit is filled with quicklime. Through chemical reactions with moisture from dew and rare rainfall, the lime gradually breaks down the remaining bone fragments into fine powder. This residue is then filtered through layers of charcoal and sand, ensuring complete purification before any runoff seeps harmlessly into the ground. This is a zero-waste system, producing no greenhouse emissions, requiring no permanent land use, and functioning efficiently for thousands of years. To those accustomed to modern industrial systems, the Tower of Silence may appear disturbing or primitive. But when viewed through the lens of survival mechanics and sanitary engineering in a resource-scarce desert environment, it stands as a cold, precise, and highly effective solution. Leaving behind the past of ancient empires and silent towers, we move straight into the heart of modern Iran. If you think the capital is just a quiet desert town with hazy markets, you are completely mistaken. Welcome to Tehran, a concrete giant that never sleeps home to 15 million people. It is loud, congested, and driven by an intense, relentless energy. Rising above this sea of concrete is Milad Tower. Standing at 1,427 feet, it is not just an observation tower, but a bold engineering achievement. Tehran sits on an unstable tectonic zone where major earthquakes can strike at any time. Building a structure of this height in such conditions demands an extraordinary mechanical solution. The reinforced concrete core of Milad Tower must support the immense load of a 315-ton steel antenna mounted at the top. To prevent structural failure during seismic events, engineers designed a deep foundation system with complex load distribution, allowing the tower to flex and absorb kinetic energy instead of fracturing. But while Milad Tower represents modern engineering precision, the transportation system below it operates as a form of perfected chaos. In Tehran, road markings seem almost decorative. Traffic is a survival battle on overcrowded streets where the only rule is to keep moving or be crushed. Millions of vehicles merge into a constant, relentless flow. You will see countless aging Peugeot models, and domestically produced Saipa cars everywhere. Due to international sanctions limiting the import of new vehicles and spare parts, these machines are kept alive through sheer mechanical persistence. When engines fail or parts break, they are not discarded. In small roadside garages, mechanics with oil-stained hands improvise, weld, and rebuild components from salvaged materials. They transform what should be scrap into durable machines that continue to navigate the brutal traffic every single day. Tehran is not just a city. It is a massive open-air mechanical workshop where survival depends on keeping everything in motion. Look directly at a harsh reality. How does a nation of 80 million people keep its factories, power grid, and transportation systems running when the global financial system has effectively shut its doors? For the men watching this, those who have rebuilt an old Chevy or Ford with their own hands, you understand the weight of this problem. In Iran, sanctions are not an abstract political idea. They are a real force pressing down on metal gears and on the wallets of working men. Iran's economy is a brutal test of endurance. The national currency, the rial, has suffered severe devaluation. Hyperinflation is not a distant threat. It is a daily reality. A man's lifetime savings can lose most of their value in a matter of months. To survive, it is common for older men to work 2 or even 3 jobs. A teacher may drive a taxi at night and work as a carpenter on weekends. Here, pride is not measured by wealth, but by the refusal to give up on providing for your family. But the clearest expression of this resilience is not found in banks. It is found in the dim mechanical workshops hidden deep within the Grand Bazaar of Tehran or in the industrial outskirts of the city. Step inside one of these metal shops. Sanctions have created an unintended generation of master mechanics. When German industrial pumps or American tractors from the 1970s break down, they cannot simply open a catalog and order replacement parts. So what do? They build them from scratch. Older craftsmen? Their eyes narrowed from welding sparks use worn manual lathes and milling machines to measure cut and forge replacement crankshafts, gears and bearings from scrap steel. Precision is measured down to fractions of an inch, without computer designs, guided only by experience and the feel in their calloused hands. This is a masterclass in mechanical recycling. They dissect machines that the industrial world has long discarded, understand how they work, and force them back into operation using improvised components. It is a quiet, stubborn form of resilience. In Iran, no machine is allowed to die, as long as there are mechanics with oil-stained hands who refuse to surrender. Leaving behind the oil-stained workshops, we move into a world where the laws of survival are dictated by venom and claws. In the wild landscapes of Iran, there is no room for mistakes. Here, nature operates like a ruthless and perfectly engineered killing machine. Beneath the burning sands of the central desert, a biological system waits in silence. It is the Persian horned viper. Unlike ordinary reptiles, it never moves in a straight crawl. When surface temperatures rise above 120 degrees Fahrenheit, sliding across the sand would cook its internal organs within minutes. To solve this thermodynamic problem, the horned viper uses a precise sidewinding motion. It throws its body in controlled diagonal loops, ensuring that at any moment only two small contact points touch the scorching surface. This method works like an active cooling system, preventing heat absorption from the ground. But its true danger lies in its weapon system. The venom of the horned viper is not just painful fluid. It is a powerful hemotoxic compound. When its hollow fangs pierce the flesh of its prey, the venom enters the bloodstream and immediately attacks the circulatory system. It destroys red blood cells and causes the blood to clot into thick masses within minutes. The victim does not die from bleeding. It dies because the blood is locked in place, the heart stops, and the respiratory system collapses. A cold, precise chemical injection with no chance of rescue in such a remote environment. And if the desert belongs to chemical weapons, then the mountains belong to muscle and invisibility. Far to the north, where freezing winds tear across the jagged peaks of the Alborz Mountains, a ghost moves unseen. The Persian leopard. This big cat is a solitary hunting machine engineered for the most unforgiving terrain. Its thick fur blends perfectly with gray rock and broken snow, creating flawless camouflage. The Persian leopard does not rely on high-speed chases across open ground. Its power is concentrated in the lever system of its hind legs, allowing it to grip and move across vertical cliffs with astonishing balance while tracking wild mountain goats. It can remain completely still for hours in sub-zero cold, calculating every angle, every movement of the wind before launching a strike powerful enough to break the neck of its prey. At altitudes where oxygen is scarce, and a single misstep means death in the abyss below the Persian leopard stands as proof that nature always knows how to forge the ultimate survival machine. In Iran, food is not about delicate, elaborate meals arranged on carefully decorated plates. If you are looking for refinement in the Western sense, you are in the wrong place. The food here is built with labor fire and large cuts of meat. It is dense fuel designed to sustain workers, shepherds, and men who must endure brutal winters or relentless heat. Start with the most iconic dish, kebab kubide. This is not simply throwing meat onto a grill. Crafting a perfect skewer of kubide requires a level of precision that resembles a chemical process. The cook must blend finely ground lamb with beef fat and grated onion in an exact ratio of fat to lean meat. Why? Because the mixture is held together without any binding agents. It must be kneaded by hand until it reaches just the right biological cohesion to cling to large, flat, heavy metal skewers. When these skewers are placed over glowing charcoal, at temperatures exceeding 600 degrees Fahrenheit, the fat melts and bastes the meat, continuously creating a perfectly charred exterior while keeping the inside moist. A small mistake in fat balance or heat control, and the entire mass collapses straight into the fire. But kubide is only part of the story. To truly understand the weight of Iranian cuisine, you have to confront dizi, also known as abgusht. This is not a light soup. It is a massive caloric engine. Dizi is a thick stew made of large chunks of lamb with bone chickpeas, solid blocks of lamb fat onions, and tomatoes. Everything is packed into heavy stone or ceramic pots and slowly simmered for hours. But what makes dizi unique is the ritual of how it is eaten. First, the rich broth is poured into a separate bowl, and you tear pieces of flatbread to soak it up. Then the remaining meat and legumes are crushed with a heavy metal pestle into a dense, fatty paste. Dizzy is not a dish for dieting. It is raw energy engineered to power through the hardest days of labor, a rough and practical culinary tradition that has endured for generations. Iran is not a nation seeking your sympathy. It is a land forged by boiling deserts, seismic fault lines, and extreme geopolitical isolation. From underground cities carved by hand to escape slaughter to engineers keeping half-century-old machines running against all odds, survival here is not an abstract idea. It is a daily mechanical process. See you next time.